The emergency klaxons screamed through the corridors of New Geneva Medical Station, their piercing wails echoing off the sterile walls like the death cries of some mechanical banshee. Dr. Kethver, the station's chief xenobiologist, watched through reinforced transperistyle as the mining shuttle docked with Berth 7. His forearms trembled slightly, a telltale sign of stress among his species as he observed the containment unit being wheeled into the station's trauma bay. "Status report," he chirped in his musical Altarian voice, though he already knew the answer would be grim. Commander Zephyr, a tall, crystalline being whose species had evolved on a peaceful world of floating islands, consulted her datapad with visible reluctance. Male Xerathi, approximately 3 meters in length, severe internal trauma from a mining explosion on Kepler 442b. The human mining crew managed to sedate it, but she paused, her translucent form flickering with anxiety. The sedatives are wearing off. Through the observation window, they could see the creatures stirring within its containment field. Even unconscious, the Xerathi was a thing of nightmares. Its obsidian scales gleamed like polished armor, each one the size of a human hand and sharp enough to cut through steel. Rows of crystalline teeth protruded from a jaw that could snap a shuttle in half, while retractable claws the length of. Swords extended and retracted with each labored breath. This was evolution's answer to a world where everything wanted to kill you. The perfect predator. Dr. Senna, the station's head of trauma surgery, entered the observation deck with her usual grace. The Etherian's gossamer wings fluttered nervously as she reviewed the patient files. "The injuries are extensive," she reported, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Massive internal bleeding, punctured organs, possible spinal damage. Without immediate surgery, it will die within the hour. Then we operate," Kethva said, though his conviction wavered as he watched the creature's eyes snap open. Those eyes burning amber orbs that seemed to hold the fury of a dying star swept the room with predatory intelligence. Even through the containment field, every being in the observation deck took an involuntary step backward. "We can't," Dr. Senna whispered, her wings folding protectively around her delicate frame. "Look at the biometric readings. The moment any of us approaches, its stress levels spike beyond safe parameters. Its blood becomes acidic, its hide hardens to diamond strength, and those pheromones ... double quotes she shuddered. They trigger fight or flight responses in every known species." The Xerathi's massive head turned toward the observation window, and for a moment, predator and prey locked eyes across the void of space and evolution. Kethver felt his legs weaken, his species' ancestral fear of ground-based hunters flooding his system with adrenaline. This was why the Altarians had evolved to live in the trees, to avoid creatures exactly like this. "There has to be something we can do," Commander Zephyr said, though her voice lacked conviction. "We can't just let it die." "Maybe we can increase the sedative dosage," Dr. Senna suggested. But even as she spoke, they all knew it wouldn't work. The Xerathi's metabolism was already fighting off the drugs, and too much sedative would kill it as surely as the internal injuries. The creature's breathing became more labored, and a thin stream of dark blood began seeping from its nostrils. Time was running out, and the galaxy's most advanced medical minds were helpless in the face of evolutionary programming older than civilization itself. "There's someone else on the station," Commander Zephyr said suddenly, her crystalline form brightening with hope. "A human, Dr. Elena Vasquez. She's here studying our exotic fauna collection." "A human?" Kethver's feathers ruffled with confusion. What could a human possibly do that we cannot? As if summoned by his words, the doors to the observation deck slid open, and Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped inside. She was unremarkable by human standards, medium height, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing simple surgical scrubs. But there was something in her brown eyes, a calm confidence that seemed to radiate from her very being. She walked directly to the observation window and gazed down at the dying Xerathi without flinching. "Beautiful," she murmured, and the alien. Doctors exchanged bewildered glances. Beautiful was not a word any sane being would use to describe the galaxy's most feared predator. Asterisk Elena pressed her palm against the cool transparistile, studying the wounded creature below with the same clinical detachment she'd once used to examine a wounded grizzly bear in Yellowstone. The Xerathi's breathing pattern told her everything she needed to know. Shallow, irregular, with that telltale hitch that indicated internal bleeding and possible lung damage. "You want to help it," she said quietly, her words cutting through the tension in the observation deck like a blade through silk. Dr. Kethfer's forearms gesticulated frantically. "Dr. Vasquez, with all due respect, you don't understand what you're dealing with. This creature is death incarnate. Its species has never been successfully treated by galactic medicine. The moment you approach, it will react defensively." Elena interrupted, her voice carrying the patience of someone who'd spent years working with dangerous animals. "Because it's in pain and surrounded by the scent of fear." She turned to face the assembled alien doctors, and they were struck by the absence of terror in her expression. "On Earth, we have a saying, there are no bad animals, only bad situations. Commander." Zephyr's crystalline form flickered with confusion. "Your species actually coexists with apex predators." "We are apex predators," Elena replied simply. "We just learned to share the planet with other ones." She gestured toward the containment. "Bay, this Xerathi isn't evil or malicious. It's a frightened, injured animal that's been thrust into an environment it doesn't understand, surrounded by beings it perceives as threats." Dr. Senna's gossamer wings trembled. "But the pheromones, the stress responses, are perfectly natural." "Defensive mechanisms," Elena said, already heading toward the airlock. "I've seen the same behavior in wounded tigers, crocodiles, even domestic dogs when they're badly hurt. The key is approach, not avoidance." "Dr. Vasquez, I cannot authorize," Kethfer began, but Elena was already cycling through the airlock. "Then, don't authorize it," she called back. "Just be ready to assist with surgery when I call for you." The containment bay felt different from the inside. The air was thick with the Xerathi's pheromones, a musky, metallic scent that would have sent most galactic species into blind panic. Elena breathed it in deeply, cataloging the chemical signatures. Fear, yes, but also pain, confusion, and underneath it all, something that surprised her, loneliness. The Xerathi's massive head swiveled toward her as she entered, those burning amber eyes fixing on her with laser intensity. Its lips pulled back in a snarl, revealing rows of crystalline teeth, and a low rumble emanated from its throat, a sound that could shatter glass and stop hearts. Elena stopped walking, but didn't retreat. Instead, she slowly sat down on the floor, making herself smaller, less threatening. It was a technique she'd learned working with big cats at the San Diego Zoo. Sometimes the best way to approach a dangerous animal was to submit to its dominance. "Hey there, big guy," she said softly, her voice carrying none of the fierce scent that had driven the creature to violence. "I know you're hurting. I'm here to help." The Xerathi's snarl faltered, confusion flickering across its reptilian features. Here was a being that should have been running in terror, yet she sat calmly just meters away, speaking in soothing tones that seemed to bypass its predatory instincts entirely. Elena began to hum a low, wordless melody her grandmother had once used to calm frightened horses. The sound seemed to resonate with something deep in the creature's brain, and its defensive posture gradually began to relax. The acidic quality of its blood normalized, its hardened hide softened, and the pheromones shifted from aggression to cautious curiosity. "That's it," Elena whispered, slowly extending her hand. "You're not a monster. You're just scared and alone, aren't you? The Zirithi's massive head tilted slightly, studying this strange little being who showed no fear, no aggression, only an inexplicable calm. When Elena's hand came within striking distance, the creature could have easily snapped it off. Instead, it simply watched, those amber eyes holding an intelligence that the galactic medical community had never bothered to acknowledge. Through the observation window, the alien doctors watched in stunned silence as Elena slowly, carefully, placed her hand on the Zirithi's snout. The creature's eyes widened, and for a moment, predator and human connected across the vast gulf of evolution. Two species who understood what it meant to be dangerous, to be feared, to be alone. Asterisk, asterisk. The touch was electric. Elena felt the Zirithi's massive body shudder beneath her palm, not with aggression, but with something far more complex recognition. The creature's breathing stabilized, and the defensive pheromones faded to be replaced by something entirely new. Trust. Remarkable, Dr. Senna's voice whispered through the CUM system. Its biometric readings are normalizing. How is this possible? Elena didn't answer immediately. She was too busy reading the creature's body language, the way its tail curled protectively around its injured torso, how its claws retracted fully for the first time since arriving at the station, the subtle shift in its posture that spoke of pain being endured rather than fought against. Because I'm not trying to dominate it, she finally replied, her hand moving slowly along the Zirithi's scaled jaw. Every species on this station evolved as prey animals or developed technology to avoid predators. You see this creature as a threat to be contained. I see it as a patient to be healed. The Zirithi's massive head lowered slightly, and Elena felt her heart skip a beat. It was a gesture of submission, not the forced submission of defeat, but the willing vulnerability of an animal that had chosen to trust. She'd seen it before in injured wolves, in wounded eagles, in every apex predator that had ever made the choice to accept help rather than fight to the death. I need to examine the injuries, Elena said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was attempting. Can you give me a detailed scan of the internal damage? Dr. Cuthbert's voice crackled through the CUM, tinged with disbelief. Dr. Vasquez, even if we could perform surgery, the creature's blood chemistry won't be a problem if it remains calm. Elena interrupted, her fingers finding the pulse point beneath the Zirithi's jaw. The heartbeat was strong but irregular, confirming her suspicions about internal bleeding. This species evolved to survive massive trauma. Their bodies are designed to heal from injuries that would kill most other beings. We just need to give the healing process a chance to work. She began a systematic examination, her hands moving with practiced efficiency along the creature's massive form. The Zirithi tensed at first, but Elena's calm murmurs and steady presence gradually convinced it to remain still. She found the primary wound, a jagged tear in the creature's side where mining debris had penetrated its natural armor, and 3 secondary injuries where the concussion had caused internal damage. The good news is that none of the injuries are immediately fatal, Elena reported, her hand still moving over the creature's body. The bad news is that without surgery, the internal bleeding will kill it within 2 hours, maybe less. And the surgery? Commander Zephyr asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Complex. The Zirithi's anatomy is designed for survival, which means redundant organs, reinforced structures, and a healing factor that will fight against any foreign intrusion. We'll need to work fast, work together, and most importantly, Elena looked directly at the observation window, we'll need to trust each other. The Zirithi's head turned to follow her gaze, and for a moment, the creature seemed to study the alien doctors with the same intensity it had shown Elena. Then, in a gesture that defied every xenobiological theory, it made a soft, chittering sound, the Zirithi equivalent of a purr. It's giving permission. Elena breathed, wonder creeping into her voice. It understands that you're here to help. Dr. Senna's wings fluttered with nervous energy. But the stress responses, the pheromones, will remain stable as long as I'm present. Elena said with quiet confidence. Zirithi are pack hunters. They understand hierarchy, loyalty, and protection. Right now, I'm the alpha of its new pack. And you're my subordinates. As long as you follow my lead, it will accept your help. The implications were staggering. For the first time in galactic history, a Zirithi had voluntarily submitted to medical treatment. The creature that had terrorized civilizations across 3-star systems was lying still, allowing alien hands to examine its wounds, trusting in the judgment of a human veterinarian who had shown it kindness instead of fear. Prepare the surgical. Bay, Elena ordered, her voice carrying new authority. We're going to save this creature's life, and in doing so, we're going to rewrite everything we thought we knew about interspecies medicine. The Zirithi's amber eyes fixed on her once more, and Elena could have sworn she saw gratitude flickering in their depths. Here was a being that had spent its entire existence as a solitary killer, and for the first time, it had found someone who saw past the fangs and claws to the intelligent, emotional creature beneath. The surgical bay had been transformed into something resembling a battlefield medical tent. Extra lighting bathed the massive surgical table in harsh white light, while emergency medical equipment hummed and beeped around the periphery. The Zirithi lay on its side, its massive form dwarfing the surgical table, while Elena performed final preparations with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Vitals are stable, Dr. Senna reported, her gossamer wings folded tightly against her back as she monitored the creature's life signs. But I must confess, Dr. Vasquez, I've never seen anything like this. The moment you step away from the patient, its stress levels begin to spike. Eleni smiled grimly as she scrubbed her hands in the sonic cleanser. And I won't step away. This is going to be a team effort, but I'll need to maintain physical contact with the patient throughout the procedure. Dr. Kethfer's 4 arms moved with practiced precision as he prepared the surgical instruments, each one specially adapted for the Zirithi's unique physiology. The internal bleeding is concentrated in 3 areas, he reported, his musical voice tight with concentration. We'll need to repair the damaged organs while simultaneously sealing the blood vessels. The creature's accelerated healing factor means we'll have a window of perhaps 30 minutes before its body begins to reject our work. Then we better work fast, Elena replied, taking her position at the creature's head. She placed both hands on the Zirithi's neck, feeling the massive pulse beneath her palms. Remember, you're not just treating a patient, you're earning the trust of an entire species. The first incision was made by Dr. Senna, whose delicate Etherian hands could work with microscopic precision. The Zirithi's body tensed slightly, but Elena's calming presence and soft murmurs kept it from entering a defensive state. Dark blood welled from the wound, but instead of turning acidic, it remained normal, a sign that the creature's stress levels were manageable. Incredible. Commander Zephyr breathed through the cum system. Its blood chemistry is remaining stable. How is this possible? Trust, Elena replied simply, her hands never leaving the creature's neck. It knows we're trying to help. The surgery progressed with mechanical precision. Dr. Kethfer's multiple arms allowed him to perform complex manipulations while Dr. Senna's gossamer wings provided additional fine motor control for delicate work. Elena served as both translator and mediator, reading the creature's body language and adjusting the team's approach accordingly. There, Dr. Senna announced, her voice filled with relief. The primary organ damage is repaired. Beginning work on the secondary injuries. But as they worked, Elena noticed something troubling. The Zirithi's breathing was becoming more labored, and its amber eyes were growing dim. The creature was fighting not just the injuries, but also the effects of prolonged sedation and the stress of being in an alien environment. It's giving up, Elena realized with horror. It's losing the will to fight. Dr. Kethfer's feathers ruffled with concern. The medical readings show improvement. The injuries are healing, but the spirit is dying, Elena interrupted. She leaned closer to the creature's head, looking directly into those fading amber eyes. Listen to me, she whispered urgently. You're not just another patient. You're the bridge between our species. If you die now, the fear and misunderstanding continue. If you live, you show the galaxy that predators and prey can coexist. The Zirathi's eyes flickered with something that might have been understanding. Elena pressed her forehead against the creature's snout, a gesture of ultimate trust that would have been suicidal with any other member of its species. You're not alone anymore, she whispered. You have a pack now. We're your pack. The change was immediate and dramatic. The Zirathi's breathing steadied, its vital signs strengthened, and its body began responding to the medical treatment with renewed vigor. The creature's healing factor, freed from the constraints of despair, began working at maximum efficiency. Remarkable, Dr. Senna breathed. Its recovery rate just doubled. The wounds are sealing themselves faster than we can suture them. Because it has something to live for, Elena replied, her voice thick with emotion. It's not just surviving anymore, it's choosing to live. The final sutures were placed with ceremonial precision, each one a small victory over the forces of fear and misunderstanding that had kept the species apart. As the last wound was sealed, the Zirathi's eyes opened fully, burning with renewed life and an intelligence that none of the alien doctors had ever seen before. Surgery complete, Dr. Kethfer announced, his voice filled with wonder. Vital. Signs are strong and stable. Patient is expected to make a full recovery. Elena kept her hands on the creature's neck, feeling the steady, strong pulse beneath her palms. No, she said quietly. This isn't the end of recovery. This is the beginning of something entirely new. Part 5. The new pack 3 days later, the New Geneva Medical Station buzzed with activity as news of the successful surgery spread throughout the galaxy. Scientists, reporters, and medical professionals from dozens of species had requested permission to observe the Zirathi miracle, as the media had dubbed it. But Elena paid little attention to the chaos outside the recovery bay, where she sat beside her patient, reading him stories from Earth. And so the mouse freed the lion from the hunter's net, she concluded, closing the datapad containing Aesop's fables, because sometimes the smallest gesture of kindness can create the strongest bonds. The Zirathi's massive head tilted slightly, those amber eyes fixed on her with unwavering attention. In the 3 days since the surgery, the creature had shown remarkable progress, not just physically, but emotionally. It had learned to recognize the different alien doctors, had stopped displaying defensive behaviors, and had even begun to show what could only be described as affection for its medical team. Dr. Senna entered the recovery bay with her usual grace, her gossamer wings carrying her across the room to check the patient's vitals. The Zirathi watched her approach without tension, even making the soft chittering sound that Elena had learned indicated contentment. "Good morning, Kethvar," Dr. Senna said, using the name Elena had given the creature in honor of the chief xenobiologist. "How are you feeling today?" The Zirathi Kethvar responded with a series of low rumbles and clicks that Elena was beginning to recognize as a form of primitive communication. Dr. Senna's wings fluttered with delight as she recorded the vocalizations. "Fascinating," she murmured. "It's developing a rudimentary language to communicate with us. This suggests intelligence levels far beyond what we previously believed possible." Elena smiled, her hand resting on Kethfer's snout. Intelligence was never the question. The question was whether we were smart enough to listen. Commander Zephyr materialized in the doorway, her crystalline form flickering with excitement. "Dr. Vasquez, we've received word from the Zirithi homeworld. They're sending a delegation to meet with Kethver. It will be the first peaceful contact between our species in over 2 centuries." The news filled Elena with a mixture of pride and trepidation. She had hoped that Kethver's recovery would open doors between species, but she hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. The Zirithi were notoriously isolationist, viewing other species as either prey or competitors. The fact that they were willing to send representatives to a medical station spoke volumes about how seriously they took this development. "How does he feel about that?" Elena asked, looking into Kethver's amber eyes. The creature's response was immediate, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to express both anticipation and nervousness. Dr. Kethver entered the recovery bay, his 4 arms carrying data pads and medical equipment. Over the past 3 days, he had spent countless hours observing the patient, trying to understand how Elena had achieved what centuries of xenobiology had deemed impossible. "The delegation arrives tomorrow," he announced, his musical voice carrying notes of excitement. "They've specifically requested that Dr. Vasquez be present for the meeting. It seems your reputation has preceded you." Elena felt a flutter of nervousness. She was a veterinarian, not a diplomat. The idea of being responsible for first contact between species was daunting, but she also knew that Kethver would need her support during what would undoubtedly be a stressful encounter. "I'll be there," she said simply, her hand never leaving the creature's neck. "We'll be there together." As if understanding her words, Kethver lifted his massive head and nuzzled Elena's shoulder, a gesture of affection that would have been impossible just days earlier. The creature that had once been feared throughout the galaxy had learned to trust, to communicate, and to form bonds with beings it had previously seen as enemies. The next morning, the delegation arrived with all the pageantry befitting a historic occasion. 3 Zirithi, each one magnificent in their own right, entered the station's main conference room with the fluid grace of apex predators. They were larger than Kethver, their scales bearing the scars of countless battles, their eyes holding the accumulated wisdom of a species that had survived on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. Elena stood beside Kethver's medical bed, which had been moved to the conference room for the occasion. The injured Zirithi was still weak, but his eyes burned with pride as he gazed upon his own kind for the first time since his accident. The lead delegate, a massive female with scales that seemed to shift color in the light, approached slowly, her amber eyes fixed on Elena with an intensity that would have terrified most beings. But Elena stood her ground, her hand resting protectively on Kethver's neck. The female Zirithi spoke, her voice a low rumble that seemed to shake the very air. The universal translator rendered her words into standard. "You are the one who saved our son." Elena inclined her head respectfully. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez. I helped heal his injuries, but he saved himself by choosing to trust us." The delegate's eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected such a response. She moved closer, her massive form dwarfing the human, and for a moment Elena wondered if she had made a mistake. Then the Zirithi did something unprecedented. She lowered her head in a gesture of respect. "You have given us more than the life of one individual," the delegate said, her voice thick with emotion. "You have given us the possibility of a future where our species is no longer alone in the universe." Elena felt tears prick her eyes as she looked around the conference room. Dr. Kethver, Dr. Senna, Commander Zephyr, and a dozen other alien beings stood watching as 2 of the galaxy's most unlikely species forged a bond that would reshape interstellar relations forever. "We are all pack," Elena said quietly, the words carrying the weight of prophecy. "Predator and prey, hunter and hunted, we are all part of the same pack." Kethver's head lifted, his amber eyes meeting those of his delegation leader. He made a series of complex vocalizations, and Elena didn't need a translator to understand their meaning. He was telling his people about the kindness he had received, about the beings who had shown him compassion instead of fear, about the human who had seen past his fangs and claws to the frightened, injured animal beneath. The galaxy would never be the same. The barrier between predator and prey had been breached not by force or technology, but by the simple act of one being choosing to see another as worthy of compassion. And in that moment, Elena realized that her grandmother's old saying had been right all along. There are no bad animals, only bad situations. The situation had changed, and with it, the future of every species in the galaxy. Asterisk.